Ari, I'll look forward to that biography and checking it out. Wow, what a great evening this has been. Really spectacular. And I'm really privileged that Susan asked me to say a few words and present one of the awards for this evening. And I'll tell you right at the get-go, I'm not as funny as Ari, not as tall or as handsome either, but not as funny. And I can't preach like Barbara. I mean, I just would assume I'd hear Barbara for another half hour. Wasn't she great? And, And certainly congratulations to the law firms and the lawyers who were just honored for your great work. Certainly I want to applaud Common Cause's unparalleled commitment to more transparent, accountable elections in government. To Susan Rubenstein, the board, the officers, the staff, all of you who support the important work of Common Cause New York, thank you for keeping this organization so strong in our state. And certainly, I have to give a shout-out to your executive director, Susan Lerner. Her leadership is an invaluable asset in the battle to bring transparency, integrity, and opportunity to the government process. She is your bulldog in pearls when it comes to fighting for reform in Albany. And thank you, Susan, for being that great leader and that great fighter. It is certainly important that we recognize individuals and organizations who are willing to step up and achieve positive change in the political arena and in the corporate world. Certainly that is a challenge that we share and a commitment that we share in the Comptroller's Office. I'm pleased to be joined by our first Deputy Comptroller, Pete Granis, who many of you know, a great reform leader in the state legislature, who works very closely with me. As some of you recall, when I became Comptroller in 2007, I inherited a mess in the office, particularly when it came to the issue of pension fund management, how we safeguard that $150 billion fund that's set up to provide retirement security for public workers in our state. And the top priority for me and for my team was to restore ethics and integrity to pension fund management. We had a goal of setting a standard for transparency and ethics among pension funds. We went about instituting substantive changes that strengthened our fund, put more eyes and more scrutiny on the investment transactions we make. And I'm very pleased to report to you, some of you may have read about it, we received a very strong validation last month that we're on the right path. An independent review of the New York Common Retirement Fund by Funston Advisory Services found that our fund is well run, operates with industry-leading level of transparency, and invests effectively on behalf of our members. It makes me feel a lot better when you get an objective analysis that says that. And I want you to know, as Comptroller, and I already touched on some of this, we've worked very hard not only to be more ethical and transparent in how we go about our decisions when it comes to our investments. We've also worked hard to make sure that the companies we invest in do the same. Our corporate governance program is one of the most active in the United States. Just in the 2012 proxy season, we filed over 60 resolutions. We're working on a wide range of issues, including environmental concerns relating to greenhouse gas emissions, fracking, rainforest deforestation, social issues like political spending, non-discrimination in employment, nuclear plant safety, and global labor standards, and governance issues relating to corporate responsibility, board accountability, board diversity, executive pay. And we've had success with our corporate governance efforts. We've gotten many major companies to adopt new policies. One recent engagement that we're very, very pleased with had to do with Qualcomm, and some of you may have been following that. It was one of our engagements related to political spending. As some of you may have read, back in January, we, on behalf of the fund, we have 5 million shares of Qualcomm valued at about $359 million, file suit against the company, something a little different than just filing a resolution, in the state of Delaware in the Chancery Court, after the company had refused our request to inspect their books with regard to corporate political spending. As a result of that action, we certainly got the attention of Qualcomm. We had some very serious and very substantive discussions, and the company decided to implement a new political spending disclosure And lo and behold, we were able to withdraw our lawsuit because we had gotten exactly what we were looking for. In fact, going forward, Qualcomm will provide stockholders with comprehensive information regarding its corporate political spending, post online the company's contributions to political candidates and political parties, political expenditures to trade associations and 501c4 organizations, and contributions to influence ballot measures. Qualcomm's new disclosure policy is a significant milestone in greater transparency in corporate political spending. It sets a standard that we hope other companies will follow. Qualcomm was indeed a good outcome. And when you consider that they had one of the worst rankings when it came to disclosure of their spending, they're now going to have one of the best rankings in that regard. If Qualcomm can do it with a little bit of gentle prodding, it's very clear that there's no excuse. Others need to do it as well. And in this post-Citizens United era that we're all going through, we must press each and every corporation to commit to full disclosure. It's not about partisan politics. We need to know how shareholder money is being spent and for what purpose. Related to this issue, and it's certainly one that Susan and I have talked about many times, and we talk about it with great optimism, the issue of financing campaigns must be addressed. And it must be addressed now, this year in 2013. It's been a priority for Common Cause, and I appreciate the fact that you've never wavered in fighting not only for campaign finance reform, but for public financing of campaigns. Having recently gone through a statewide race as a middle-class fellow who's not able to pull a few $1,000,000 out of my personal wallet, which my opponent was able to do, I know how hard it is to compete with the influence of money these days. And certainly I have that concern that I know you have, that that opportunity to compete for public office, especially for major offices, will be defined purely by money and personal wealth. And that's what our democracy certainly should not be about. We need to change that equation. The best and only way to restore public trust in government is through public financing of election campaigns. And as Susan well knows, there's a lot of talk about doing it in Albany this year, and I know there's always concerns about the budget. Believe me, I know that very well. If we have to start somewhere, as I've said, going back to 2007, given some of the challenges we've had in our office, start with the Comptroller's office. And we have a bill that we propose, strict limits on contributions for primary and general elections, public financing to have a level playing field and to really guarantee opportunity. Even if we can't do it across the board, if we at least start with this office, I'm sure we'll prove it can work on a statewide basis as it works here in New York City, and then we can expand it to all the statewide offices, all the legislative offices as well. So, Susan, I'm with you. Let's hope this is the year we're going to make it happen, right? With Common Cause leading the way.